sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. My name's Virginia Jones, and my sister's a therapist.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan, licensed marriage and family therapist, and my sister, Virginia Jones, is a stand-up comedian.
Welcome to our podcast where we talk about brain stuff, mental health stuff, comedy stuff. Those are the main things we talk about in TikTok.
So, Virginia, what are we talking about today?
This is a listener suggestion. So thank you, listener Steve M.
Thanks, Steve.
Anyone who does have suggestions or questions can always write us at hello@mysister'satherapist. And we could use them and you could be famous like Steve.
Another way to get famous is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. And at the end of every episode, I will read it.
She chooses the very best ones, so write a really good one.
We don't read the crummy ones.
No, we do not. So today our topic is parasocial relationships.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a one-sided connection where you imagine a personal bond with someone you don't know. It can be a celebrity, fictional character, or most commonly, social media influencer.
It's like my relationship with Trevor Noah.
Yes, your very hot and heavy love relationship with Trevor Noah. My relationship with the fictional character Wolverine, although he's fast being replaced by Loki.
But is this fictional? Is this not real? You don't think there's an exchange of some kind?
In these relationships, one person may develop feelings of closeness and familiarity with the other person, even though they have never met. I think this is a huge word right now. I first heard it in maybe 2015 or something. What is your familiarity with the concept of parasocial relationships?
Well, I can give you a perfect example of some parasocial relationships that I had. My sister Emily and I snuck into a Saturday Night Live after party.
With the help of the Strokes. Thank you, Strokes.
That's right. The help of the Strokes. It was great. So let me paint a picture. Jack Black was the guest and the Strokes were the band. And at that time, my sister and I really only had two interests in life. We snuck in, but basically Emily said, if we don't go to this show or go to New York and do this, I basically can't speak to you anymore. So I thought, all right. So anyway, we snuck into the party and I look around and I see all of these familiar faces. I see Will Ferrell. I see Chris Kattan. I see basically a who's who, a bevy of people.
Of popular performers of the time.
I saw Jimmy Fallon and he was alone. So I cornered him. And I said, hey, I saw you last night on a rerun and it was this sketch that you did about where you were being Harry Connick Jr. And he said, oh, that's so cool. That was the first sketch I ever wrote. And
that's adorable.
It was adorable. And then he immediately turned his head and went and talked to someone that he knew.
I've had my interaction with you. I think I should talk to another famous person, another FP.
Right. So basically I cornered a few people. And what I realized after a few minutes is this is like going to an office party for business. It's been around for a long time. These people all know each other extremely well. And I'm just some rando.
It's like being the spouse of someone who works at the office.
Not even the spouse. I'm somebody's second cousin who was in town for the weekend. Like nobody wants to talk to me. No one is interested. Obviously, Jack Black talked to me because we don't have a parasocial relationship. He and I are best friends.
For the listener, Laura and Emily had spent a long time going to every Tenacious D show they could and getting backstage as often as they could. So she and Jack Black had a very real, somewhat creepy friendship.
I don't think he enjoyed it, but he did recognize us. And as my mother said at the Paris airport when we ran into Jack Black, my daughters are rabid fans. Rabid. One of my most humiliating moments. I thought, I didn't realize in my late 20s that my mother could still humiliate me. But you know what? My hat's off to her.
I think that's something that we learn all the time, is that your mother can always humiliate you. And usually in front of Jack Black.
Often. That is my life example. Will Ferrell waved at me and gave me a nice smile. He doesn't know me.
No.
But I know a lot of things about him.
So the term parasocial relationships was coined in 1956 by two sociologists, Horton and Wohl, and it was about television. It was about performers on television. Because more than any other time in history, this was a time when a lot of people could be exposed visually to a performer at the same time. But yeah, and probably people had the same feeling about radio celebrities before, as Trevor Horn said, video killed the radio star. Trevor Horn of Buggles fame. These sociologists said, part of the thing is that television hosts are kind of fostering this relationship. They're engendering intimacy. They're fostering the illusion of intimacy. It makes us feel that the person is talking to us personally. That's part of the skill of being a TV performer, but it also creates this false sense of knowing.
Much like my relationship with the cast of my favorite podcast, Smartless.
I think that in this time, my first big parasocial relationship that became almost a friendship was with two guys on a radio show that I was listening to, because when someone's voice is directly in your ears, it is hard to distinguish someone you know and don't know. You could be on the phone with a person. You could just be listening to a person talk. But I think podcast performers definitely foster parasocial relationships.
Absolutely. Because I think you're talking about your own personal stories and your own life. Sometimes a listener will message me about something that I said at random and I won't even remember it. They just heard it.
And this is something that I've experienced also in stand-up. But Laura was sharing with me this week that she reached for a tried and true anecdote, family story in a therapy session. And her client said, "Oh, I know this story because you said it on the podcast."
Right. So I'm rapidly running out of anecdotes to say in my therapy office.
Running out of fresh material. I think a big parasocial thing that I think we've all experienced is celebrity death. It's one of my least favorite things on Facebook, but I understand why it happens. When a celebrity dies, especially, if it's sudden or they're very young, but that you've had a particular bond with, parasocial relationship with, everybody kind of does this public grieving for a stranger. Matthew Perry was a recent one.
I remember there was a big deal when David Bowie passed.
Right. I was going to say for cool people, it was Bowie and Prince. But, regular degulars got really upset.
For the basics. The basics.
But because it's wild because you don't know the person, but you've experienced joy from the person. You've seen them. You think you know what they are or who they are. And then when someone really important to you dies.
I remember when Amy Winehouse died, I was in the Bahamas floating on a tube in the ocean and somebody yelled it out. I found myself feeling violently angry.
Amy Winehouse, it was so tragic because her whole career pointed at her cause of death, right? It felt like the completion of a story that was just terrible about addiction and about needing help that no one would offer. So that one was very hard.
I was actually really angry with her because I thought, my God, you were given this level of talent and you just trashed it because of your bulimia and drug addiction. But that's not a very sensitive take.
And because of your history of trauma and because of your messed up dad who was on a documentary saying, a lot of performers can function with a certain amount of heroin.
Right. The song Rehab was written because of her dad.
If you're making money and you are an addict, but people are making money off of you, no one's going to help you. Ewan McGregor said after he got sober, I was so drunk on so many movie sets and nobody said anything to me. And it's because he wasn't messing with the money.
Well, you're basically the golden goose, right? You don't want to upset the golden goose because he's going to keep giving you more eggs.
When I went to go see the Amy Winehouse doc, 3/4 of the movie, there's the footage of her being wheeled out on a gurney. A woman in the audience said, "Oh my God." And I'm like, did you not know this is what happened?
It was a spoiler alert moment in the middle of the movie theater.
Hey, this person you knew a little bit about, guess why she's not making records anymore? The next thing I wanted to talk about is so you mentioned familiarity. And this is particularly a problem on YouTube because YouTubers are, more than any other kind of performer, encouraged to put their quote unquote real life out there. And especially paired with the fact that a lot of YouTubers are very, very young. People have very strong parasocial relationships and it causes a lot of stress and pressure. There was a young lady, Christina Grimmie, who actually was shot at a meet and greet by a fan who called her his soulmate because he had developed just an out of control parasocial bond with her.
Some might call it an obsession.
But, we've had a lot of that. Johnny Versace, John Lennon, celebrities, Andy Warhol. I mean, I don't know if she was a fan.
The girl from My Sister Sam. It was an 80s TV show where this girl lived in an apartment with her brother, I think. It was very early days. That's why it was so crazy, because she was 18 years old. I think the show had only been on for a little bit. And somebody, attacked her and ended her life.
Now, John Lennon's death later they found a list of celebrities that Mark David Chapman had drawn up. Because John Lennon might not have died because Mark David Chapman particularly had a bond with him, but because he just wanted to kill the most famous person he could.
He was on the list.
But death affected the career of Mr. David Bowie, who was doing Elephant Man on the West End at the time, because Bowie was on the list. So he made a decision in that moment. He was like, I can't do stage performances anymore, like where I'm doing a theater performance where I'm in the same place every night, because I'm too exposed. Like, it's too dangerous.
That is terrible. My Sister Sam was a show in 1986. I guess they had 2 seasons. Pam Dauber was the main character, and then Rebecca Schaefer. Unfortunately, Patty Russell was the woman and lost her life.
That's awful. Circling back to YouTubers, a lot of young YouTubers are quitting because not just because of the parasocial relationships, but because of the immense stress of putting your whole life online. And they're recognizing, and bless Gen Z, you're going to save all of us. They're recognizing that it's not good for your mental health.
No. I was watching a documentary series on Netflix last night about these young women who are targeted by this cyber stalker. You know, they're all YouTubers. And basically, because everything is exposed, all of the information about them, this cyber stalker knows what she wore to X event and where it was and who she was with. And so he manages to get her whole phone book of friends and relatives and makes fake messages. And because everything that she does is documented.
A UK YouTuber, Charlie McDonnell, who was the first guy in the UK to reach 1 million subscribers on YouTube, quit this in March 2023. And he said, I have essentially quit YouTube. It turns out that tying up your perceived worth with your level of success on a website is a very bad idea.
Oh, that's really sad and extremely true.
Well, Laura has a thriving TikTok presence that she has already experienced some of these feelings about, because TikTok is born to frustrate, and like, it's very intentional. TikTok will, after you've had a hot video that it's shown a lot of people and it's got a lot of views, your next one is going to eat crap by design.
Right. So let's check the TikTok numbers currently. I remember when Jenny was really obsessed with views and stuff, and I was like, why does she care? But it's because it's
now
like
you're right here with it.
Rat cocaine.
It's a constant dopamine rush. When you have a video that's doing well, or you have a post that's doing well on Instagram, refreshing it and going back to look at it, it's a constant stream of dopamine.
Right. So, okay. So I had a video blow up for me, 35.4K views.
Very respectable.
And then the next one, I curated, like I specifically picked something similar to the one that blew up, and I had 76 views.
Mm-hmm. That second video is probably just as good as the last video. It doesn't matter, but you're allowing an algorithm to mess with your head.
Yes, it feels like the spigot was open and then they just shut it off.
But it's because TikTok doesn't care, particularly if you're making good content or bad content. TikTok wants you to make content. And to really get you to dance on the hot plate, they do this intermittent rewards thing. I'm extremely chill about it because I was where you were 3 years ago.
It's just, I find it infuriating. You know, I just think, because like you said, I think the content is just as good, but now no one's going to see it. And that's annoying.
Another hard talk in particular is the phenomenon of TikTok bullying. Like, Laura has experienced that when you have a video that is getting, 10% of your regular viewers have seen it, maybe 20, it's pretty chill. But as soon as you get something that is popular and people from the wrong side of TikTok see it, you're opening yourself up to abuse. Yeah,
I had 32 rapid fire messages from the same guy on one TikTok. Remember the guy who was telling me I was a misogynist? Everyone tells me I'm a misogynist. Why not?
Yeah, well, they're not wrong.
I'm a misandrist is what I am.
What his mistake is that thinking that you care or that it's necessarily a bad thing.
Well, and what I wanted to say is, sir, my opinions on the men come from my life experience. And I'm sorry that you don't like my life experience and my lived reality. I think I did say that.
But yes, I had to encourage you to stop talking to him and walk away because it will eat your whole day.
He also deleted all of his messages.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is.
That means you've won. Another little side thing is the fallacy, the incredible waste of time. And everybody knows this intellectually, that arguing with strangers on the internet is a waste of time. But when you are doing it, you are feeling all of, like, you are getting activated and you're getting all your like fight or flight and your heart's beating. and you get very into it. I think it took me until over lockdown, 15 years of social media presence, I guess 20. I'm not going to change this person's opinion, and they're not going to change my opinion. And I should stop. I had a boyfriend who would tell me these long stories about arguments he'd gotten on Facebook, and they were like hero stories about how I really told them the right way to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, I learned the same lesson from my ex-husband, which is why I usually don't interact with internet bullies, but my sister told me that I should on TikTok to boost my ratings.
Okay, here's the thing. You've made me look like an a-hole, and now I have to defend myself. If someone says a couple things to you that you can be smart at, especially if you can respond with a video, this is free TikTok for you guys.
Free TikTok advice if you're a TikTok creator.
That can do very well. But when it goes past one or two exchanges, you got to walk away because it will eat your day.
Yes. Virginia, have you ever had the experience of a parasocial relationship where you are the celebrity?
Oddly, yes. It is very strange because I am completely non-famous, right? I have had
interactions. You're practically invisible.
So, okay, cards on the table. I have a very small TikTok following. It's 20,000 people. I love all of you. I love those of you who are listening to this podcast.
That is not very small. I have 388 followers.
I've been performing stand-up comedy for 18 years. And the thing that happens to me, you'll be surprised, it's a lot of men have a parasocial relationship with me. So it's led to a couple things. I'm usually pretty quiet about my personal relationships online because not everybody who's following me is a friend or family member, right? Even in small things, like I'm a little more careful. 2, I learned a hard lesson, which is don't date a fan. A couple years ago, I was feeling sad and I had a fan in Seattle who was, kind of flirting with me. And I'm like, you know what? This is going to be great. This is someone who already likes me. I don't have to prove myself to this person. But what happened was he would say things to me that were my own jokes, like turned inside out or like rotated in a way. He was telling my joke back to me.
To you. Okay, that's super weird.
And like sometimes it would be something that it would be something I said once on a podcast. And then he would say it and then he would look at me about like, get it?
Oh, God.
And it was incredibly creepy.
Yeah, I think there's confusion about what you're doing all day. Like, I think that, when people see you in a certain context all the time, they just think, oh, well, that's your whole life. I'm like, well, I had, 23 other hours that day.
Right. And I definitely have had experiences with female friends who, if they're very good on Twitter, Marcella Arguello, who's incredibly funny and incredibly mean, but she's like, don't love my Twitter following and my Twitter feed, but then complain that I'm on the phone all the time. These two things go together.
Right. They're connected. My son follows a YouTuber pretty closely that he loves. And I think, what a cool kid. Like, I really like that kid. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny or interesting if we hung out with him? But then I thought, no, because he's constantly has his phone out recording everything he does. And that would be so irritating.
I have a good friend in Toronto who had a some sort of celebrity YouTuber come stay with him and his husband. And the person used footage from their house and the person used footage of them talking and like stuff that he wasn't supposed to do because there's no boundary.
Yeah, I don't like that. So my son is obsessed with Ben of the Week of YouTube fame.
Oh, right. Even I know Ben of the Week.
Well, he's kind of a big deal.
Well, I know him through my nephew, who is also your son because you're my sister.
Yes. Anyway, but I was watching a Ben of the Week recently, and he went to a nail salon and got the longest nails.
Gross.
Yes. And then he decided they weren't long enough. So he glued chopsticks to the end. And it's very funny to watch, but like, if that were my son, that would be so annoying.
If you actually had to live with someone who was doing that. Talking a little bit more about the unique issues of being a woman on the internet. So I am friends with 3 amazing comics, Tess, Barbara, and Brandy, who have a podcast called Lady to Lady that's been going for over 10 years. And we were talking about parasocial relationships. Brandy's like, this is a podcast kind of for women. It's 3 women talking. We would love our audience to be entirely women, but men are the ones who subscribe. Men are the ones who buy our merch. Men are much more comfortable with the parasocial thing than women, so they have to be along for the ride.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was harassing a mom at school pickup about listening to my podcast. She said, well, I just don't really listen to podcasts. And I said,
Right.
it's interesting. Most women don't because
Right.
we don't have the time. And what I wanted to say to her probably sounded creepy, but what I was going to say is, well, I listen to it while I put on my makeup and take a shower.
But I've had conversations with other women performers, and you have to make a decision to see, right? Like, the people who have stalked me is because my schedule is on a website. And you have to make a separation in your mind. What is the distance someone can come see you from who is a fan? And when does that cross over to stalking? And we decided it was 100 miles. You can like my comedy all you want, but if you've traveled more than 100 miles to see me at my fame level,
you're moving into unhealthy waters.
It's also interesting. Another parasocial thing that has happened to me. I had a lady approach me and say, I'm a huge fan of your content on TikTok. And that was very flattering. Then she introduced me to a table of people and told like the opposite version of one of my jokes that makes me look like a pervert. I'm like, that's not what that joke is. And that's not what it's about. And then I had to defend myself to this table full of women. But what you forget is that once you create something, people are going to take from it whatever they're going to take from it.
People do with it whatever they like. I remember Billy Idol saying he thought it was so funny that people play White Wedding at their wedding.
At their wedding! Like,
This is not romantic.
No. But also, people are kind of dumb. The stalking thing on TikTok is weird, like, tells everybody, never reveal your location. Never let people even have the area of where you live. Because, in like other TikTokers, their whole thing is finding people from a short video.
Yeah, there was this kid that I followed on TikTok. I think he was a psychic or something. He was a card reader. He was on the account that I had to close because I became inundated with tarot readings.
Tarot readings and dowsing.
Yeah, I got really tired. But anyway, I remember one of his bits was he would walk around his neighborhood talking about stuff. And I'm like, man, I can see the signs. I know where you are.
There was a woman TikToker who her whole account, and TikTok, I think, is kind of, maybe it's moving out of this area, or maybe I'm just not seeing it as much, but it'd be people who did one thing that was barely anything, but they would do it all the time. And her whole thing was she would wear these robes that are covered in ostrich feathers, the Merry Widow robes, and flounce around to music.
Okay.
And she made a video, and it was creepy because it was only ever the inside of her house. There were very little other clues to her location, but I guess people recognized her. And so one night she's recording a video and there's a knock on her door and people showed up and said, "Hey, we know it's you."
That's so scary.
And she was like, "Don't do that, guys. Please don't."
My son also, I'm just going to go ahead and out myself as a very bad parent because my son watches YouTube 22 hours out of the day. But he was showing me there's a guy on YouTube. People will bet him they can't locate them. He'll do it in the creepiest. I know there's the Walmart that's in the distance behind you. There's only a place that has a Walmart and a Stop and Shop within a block of each other in Idaho. So I'm guessing your house is here. He's always right. And it's very scary.
And the free time, and I think I've mentioned it on this podcast before, but one time I told a story on a very popular podcast about two people who I had brief interactions with and did not like. And people were sending me photographs, had found them on Instagram and said, "This them?" I'm like, "Oh no."
Unfortunately, we didn't get that same kind of energy for Arthur Griebler.
No one has stepped up stalking Arthur Griebler. The only person who really did it was Laura.
If anyone wants to DM me, I'll tell you everything about Arthur Griebler.
God.
So I now have a parasocial relationship with one of your trolls.
Yes. Who I was hoping was a child. That's part of why I thought it was funny.
No, he was like a 60-something-year-old man.
A full-grown freaking plumber. Very gross. So the person who submitted this question, Steve, also spoke specifically about stand-up comedy. And there's a lot of interesting things in this. I've had interactions so I was waiting to go up at a show. I was talking to my friend, Vance. Said, "Vance, how are you?" And he said, I'm okay. I'm fine. And I'm like, "Oh, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh, nothing really." And then he went on stage and talked about how his wife had been diagnosed with cancer and he is someone who has survived cancer and starting this process again. And I was like, man, we're friends. But he didn't want to, quote, burn the material just talking to me.
That is very weird.
And so our listener said, sometimes I will watch other comics and I will know very intimate things about their lives, even though I don't know them. And I have a weird feeling of getting to know them through their material. it is something that happens in comedy. And like another thing is when you sit down and do a podcast with another comic, you will learn more about them than you have learned in 10 years of seeing them at shows.
But I also think it's because at the show, everyone's just waiting to go up and you're reviewing your jokes and it's not casual and it's, you can't really let your hair down. You're just sort of getting ready.
Yeah. And it's pre and post performance, but it is very weird. The things you learn about each other on stage that you would never share just talking to each other.
Right. Because that's not normal social relationships.
One time I was living in an apartment complex in Portland, Oregon, and the apartment manager told me a story about the people who'd lived in my apartment before. And he said they had a clogged toilet and I had a plumber out to fix the toilet. And the plumber came to me and said, listen, I have to tell you what I pulled out of their toilet because it was a potato that had been carved roughly into the shape of a phallus and that had a blue condom on it.
Wow. We couldn't put that in the trash, guys?
Why toilet? And so my poor apartment manager said he had to charge them back and he wrote on the thing toilet abuse. So I have carried that story around with me for 20 years.
Oh, wow. I've never heard of it. I'm glad that I was able to lead you there.
What are the good and bad things about parasocial relationships? If you're a performer, having people have a little bit of a parasocial connection with you is good because it means they are involved with you. They are committed and they're on the journey with you. But it can swiftly take a turn. Hugh Jackman, the actor that plays Wolverine, was jogging in London a couple years ago.
And he didn't like that you were running behind him.
A woman ran at him and screamed, "I love you, Hugh," and then threw razors at him that had her own pubic hair in them, which brought me to the question, did that work?
I think the question that comes to mind for me is, why? I thought you were going to say she threw roses at him. That makes sense.
Right. That's something that would be there's an A to B to C. No, she threw her own pubic hair at him.
Or even a handful of pubic hair. That kind of makes sense. But razors with pubic hair in them?
You can't throw a handful of pubic hair. And this is why. Because it's just going to get caught in the wind. It doesn't weigh enough.
Maybe we could get some glue involved.
So yeah, on the dark side, parasocial relationships can be very dangerous for the performer as well as, for the fan, like that man who shot the YouTuber, shot himself right afterwards. So Laura, if you had a person in your practice, a client, who was uncomfortable with their level of parasocial relationship with a celebrity, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think if it were a teenager, I would say this is normal. When I was 14, I had a Morrissey shrine in my bedroom, which I think is perfectly normal. Also, if they're autistic spectrum disorder or ADHD, yeah, you're going to do that. That's part of being a neurodivergent.
What you are, right.
It's about getting really obsessive about stuff. I think much like the doll head, I think if it starts to interfere with your daily relationships.
This is a reference to a previous episode. Returning listeners will remember when we talked about the woman who was addicted to sniffing a doll head in our sex episode.
She was on the show, My Strange Obsession.
And since you've mentioned teenagers, I've realized that, this radio show was by no means my first parasocial relationship. My first parasocial relationship
was with Boy George.
Yes. And then Simon Le Bon.
Right.
And then Robert Smith, The Cure, which has continued until today.
Until you were today years old when you realized you were still at an insane parasocial relationship with Robert Smith.
Yeah. And the Robert Smith thing in particular, when he married, I was a teenager when he married the love of his life, Mary Poole. They're still together today. #couples goals. Me and every goth girl I knew was torn up by this.
You thought, I had a shot.
Didn't we almost have it all? Robert, why would you choose a fellow adult who's from your hometown and not a 14-year-old in suburban Dallas?
Morrissey, why would you choose to date exclusively men instead of a 13-year-old from Dallas?
But you're right. You touched on something that's interesting that I know, which is that fangirl phase of the hero worship is a normal part of our romantic development.
Right. I think it's just a part of growing up. I think because we're not old enough to have real relationships, we're trying out the kind of fixation obsession part of relationships.
And girls today will who's your favorite K-pop boy? I like, Shujan because he's the bad boy.
Instead of realizing that none of this is real. People have created this. These are just regular guys who got tricked into being in a boy band.
I went to go see The Cure last year, and we were running late, and I was aggravated by this. And my boyfriend at the time said, "Do you really think that if the lights come up, Robert's going to look at your seat in section
105 seat, 812.
Right, at the Hollywood Bowl and say, 'We can't start yet. Virginia's not here'?"
Is this why you guys broke up?
Yeah. And I said, "Listen, Buster, you, along with every relationship I've ever had, including my ex-husband, are just a placeholder for the time that Robert Smith somehow meets and falls in love with me."
That tracks. I hear you. That makes sense.
You will be lifted out of your position. Robert Smith will be dropped in.
He'll be teleported in.
And I'm very clear with this, with all relationships. The person I'm seeing now, I've told him, like, "Hey, I really like you. If Robert Smith knocks on my door at any time, it's over. I won't even complete the sentence I'm saying to you. I will just grab my bag and go. You will never see me again." Except for on television, having a productive relationship with Robert Smith. It's weird how much of that I have experienced, even at the very low levels that I am at. People have said to me, "Your comedy got me through a rough time." People have said to me, "Oh, I really thought about this for a long time," and will tell me their take on it, and it's completely different than my intention. It's very odd. And also when people say, "Oh, I met this celebrity and they were rude," or "I met this celebrity and they were mean to me." And if you scratch the surface, frequently it's just that the person didn't want to sit down and have a multi-hour conversation with them.
Right.
Or didn't have time to engage on the level that they felt that they deserved. I'm like, hey, what if they're just a person living their life?
Right. They're on their way to their daughter's ballet performance and they don't have time to talk to you in the middle of Times Square. They're trying to get through this. I'm just remembering my parasocial relationships. When I met John Schneider of Dukes of Hazzard fame.
Oh, that's right. In New York City.
In New York City. I think I was 15 at the time. I still thought he was really something. I couldn't find a pen to get him to sign my playbill because we had just seen him in a play. And I swore, and he did not like that because he said, nope. And then I realized, he and I have gone in real different directions. Since the Dukes of Hazzard.
So circling back to some sort of therapeutic value, if you had an adult client who was uncomfortable with their level of interest in a stranger, a celebrity they didn't know, what is your advice to them?
I mean, I guess the first question would be, why are you uncomfortable? What is it about it that makes you uncomfortable? And I think, if it's interfering with other parts of your life, then you should do something about it. If it's a nice escape, if it's something that makes you feel good and makes you feel happy, then I would say continue.
Let's just say I have an obsession with Scarlett Johansson. I can't stop thinking about her. I'm continually fighting the desire to write her and contact her, and I'm really struggling. What do I do then?
I would first try to find out if there's a diagnosis. Because if you start getting into that level of obsession, there's probably something biochemically happening.
There's something going on with me and Robert Smith that I really need to address.
Yes. If my fixation with ScarJo is getting to the point where I can't get through a day without looking at her, this is kind of what we talked about in the sex addiction episode. This is what we'll talk about in an upcoming episode about fantasy. If it's not a coping strategy anymore, and it starts to become something that's making your life harder and making it difficult to get through the daily activities of life, then you should probably figure something else out.
So, Laura, what are your final thoughts on this topic of parasocial relationships?
Well, I think they're mostly harmless. I had a very brief experience with being the person who was the celebrity.
Laura had a cool opportunity to talk about her practice on television in Austin.
Right. I was on a radio show and I was on local TV. So for the following, few months, anytime a new patient came in, I would see something really weird happen to their face when they met me.
They would light up.
Right. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing to George Schneider. It's very uncomfortable and unpleasant. It's this very weird, you don't know me, but you're excited that I'm around. So it just reminded me of that. Because I'm used to being the person on the giving end, but I'm not used to being the person on the receiving end. And my little taste of it was not great.
Right. Borderline unpleasant.
Yeah. I guess my final thoughts on parasocial relationships is I do think they're an important part of emotional development. I think that we all do it. And I think it's a good thing if you're a young man or a young woman to develop who you are based on these people that you've never met. But it starts to get weird once you pass a certain threshold. And I think we all have to kind of decide what that threshold is for ourselves. So, Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
So it's interesting to think about the positive aspects of a parasocial relationship. And you're right, like ways you can kind of play out and try on personalities, relationships in the world of make-believe. But it can be very creepy to be on the receiving end. Again, very limited experience. I've talked about it before. But the way you can tell is someone's eyes light up. They seem like they're your friend, but you've never seen them before.
Right. There's a look of recognition from a total stranger, and that is really creepy.
Yeah, I guess I just hadn't thought about the positive aspects of it before, and that's interesting. And as the entertainment landscape becomes more and more flat and like at ground level, there's fewer TV shows being made. CBS bought 0 pilots this year for pilot season, which has never happened before. People are looking at YouTube and TikTok and quote unquote ordinary people for their entertainment now. And it's going to lead to more bizarre, specific parasocial relationships. But as long as you, as a performer, keep yourself safe, and as a fan, you keep a respectful distance, like we can all kind of benefit from them.
Yeah, I think it's about the boundaries. You just triggered a memory. I remember when I was walking home from school, and I did this more than once because, I don't know, ADHD, but I used to listen to the Smiths on my Walkman and sing loudly because I'm me. But I used to have this fantasy story in my head that for some reason, Morrissey was in my crappy little suburban town, and he would be able to hear me, and he would come outside and rush out, and we would be best friends. I'm just going to tell you, surprisingly, it never happened.
A really weird one that I had, I was in love with Agent Mulder from the X-Files. And many people would say, oh, you have a crush on David Duchovny. No, specifically Agent Mulder, not the actor who played him. Because the character, extremely conventionally good-looking man who doesn't know that he's good-looking and is very shy and weird, that's something that happens all the time in life.
That's the combo that you liked.
But I used to have a weird free-floating fantasy as an adult. Like, I had a job. I was working at an apparel company. And I thought, what if Mulder had to come in here for something?
What if Mulder was looking for special fabric that repelled aliens?
God, it was a daydream, and it was not a real thing.
You never acted on it because
nothing to act on. Yeah, there's no reason for Agent Mulder, who's not a real person, to be in Fort Worth, Texas during the day.
So, Virginia, if somebody wants to reach out and find out more about your comedy and your online career, where would they find you?
You can find me at badinia.com, BADINIA. That's also my TikTok and my Instagram. I do have dates on a calendar on my website, which is badinia.com. Please come to shows, but not if it's over 100 miles away.
Also, don't harass her at the shows. Just come and enjoy the comedy.
After the show, you can say, that was great. I am a fan. And I'll say, thank you very much. Would you like a sticker? Laura, where can people find you online?
Well, you can find me at lauraryan.org, my professional website. You can also find me on TikTok. I am Laura Ryan. Or in addition, you can go to my website, mysistersatherapist.com. And if you want to send us an email, you would email us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com and tell us all about why you think our show's so great. Also, if you'd like to hire us to speak at your women's conference, mental health conference, wellness event, women's retreat, educational seminar, corporate event, or workshop, you can email us at hireuss@mysistersatherapist.com.
Laura, this is the segment where we usually do a listener review. Do you have a listener review for us this week?
I, in fact, do. This one is from Emco.
Hi, Emco.
Hi, Emco. Thank you. So Emco said, blending therapy and comedy offers a fresh perspective. This podcast is for anyone looking to delve deeper into mental health topics with a lighthearted and accessible approach. I love how the sisters share relatable anecdotes from their lives, along with practical tools for listeners who want to learn more. The contrasting backgrounds of the sisters creates an engaging dynamic and humor. Highly recommended.
That is very sweet and very detailed. Thank you.
Thank you, Emco. That was very kind. So in closing, in the immortal words of Billy Ray Valentine, Capricorn, we can make it, baby.
Me and you.
Bye-bye.